I say Britain colonising India, it wasn't really Britain. It's a bit like the modern world, where you have huge companies controlling the world. And it was the East India Company who actually colonised India, and they were the people who were getting the beer. So the north.
Also the dry hopping.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether it would oxidize or whatever due to dry.
No.
Like that, or
No, I mean the dry hops would have been in the beer for a long time, as we'll get to later when I describe how Bass brewed their IPA. You'll see the dry hops were in there for a very, very long time.
I mean, the beer then has been in the vat for I don't know, 10, 12 months. It's oxidized anyway.
Yeah.
So and I think nobody really cared about oxidization like we do today.
But why pale ales? Why not dark ales? Isn't it better for exporting?
We'll get on to that later as well. IPA actually exported to India in the 1840s. And you'll note that some are actually quite low in gravity. So 1053, that's about 13 Plato.
Yeah, roughly.
So not particularly strong, although it does vary quite a bit. But no, high rate of attenuation for all of them. In principle, very similar to the other one. Basically, just pale malt and golden.
you know how long it was
Peter, wie lange ist es, wie lange hast du es gelagert?
Welches?
Das Bier, was wir jetzt gerade trinken.
9 months.
9 months.
9 months. 9 months.
And the other one was older.
The other one was, I think, 12 and a half.
And what kind of thing?
Just in a stainless steel.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole point is that they didn't want to get any other flavour when it was aged. So it'd be neutral oak basically that it was aged in. And it's also important to say that porter and stouts were aged in vats. I mean, initially large ones, later on much smaller ones. Whereas IPA was all aged in hogsheads, not in vats.
What's the difference?
Well, the vat's much bigger.
Much bigger. Much bigger. You can actually stand with lots of people in the vat. So
You can
it's
drown.
like, it's like a
You can drown it.
yeah.
People got killed because when they broke.
Yeah. I mean, there's a famous one in 1814 which killed
What
about a dozen people.
Okay. Well,
But there were other ones. When I started looking into some of the history, I realised that wasn't the first time a big vat had broke. It's just the first time when it killed people.
it's the same in Germany.
Yeah?
Yeah. And the various breweries have basically the same system. It's very huge. And there were also people that also dropped. Oh.
Yeah, I think it was a disturbingly rare occurrence that they break. And so, this is another Truman's beer. Again, yeah, so again, stupidly heavily hopped.
What's the reason for the extremely long boiling time? Like 210 minutes.
Because they used to boil beer for longer. Quite often the boil times are way longer. If you're looking at early 19th century porter, some of the worts they'd be boiling for 4 hours.
But why? It's expensive.
Well, in the case of porter, like they'd have 4 mashers, 4 worts. First one they boil for an hour, second one 2 hours, third one 3 hours, fourth one 4 hours. It's to concentrate the wort and to concentrate the colour.
Oh.
It's a really good question, and one that I spent about 15 years. The reason being that it has a load of personal things for me, because that's my father's initials. Andrew Campton Pattinson. And also, it's the name of the bitter of the only brewery I've ever worked in, which was the one in my hometown of Newark. And at the time, it was like one of 2 beers in the whole country that was called AK. And when you go back further, there were hundreds of beers with that name. The story they used to tell in my hometown was it was named after the head brewer, Arthur King. Total bollocks. Not true at all. And after spending, because what you have things called brewhouse names, which is the name they call beers in breweries. And there's loads and loads of them. And after spending 15 years looking at old brewery price lists, I managed to work out what it means. So the A, that's about the strength. So A is 1 below X.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. It means ale. The K, that means it's a bitter or a pale ale and not a mild. It's as simple as that. So when you go up, yeah. And then when you go one up from AK, you have XK, which is the same thing but a bit stronger. And then you'd sometimes have XXK as well, which is stronger than that. Yeah, I've heard loads of other theories about what it calls, where the name comes from, but they're all fucking wrong, because I'm the only person who's ever actually looked into this properly, so, like with lots of things. I'm starting to talk again. So, yeah, Fast Pale Ale, 9 months of local stuff, 12 months exported. Yeah, the stuff in India was very old.
Yeah.
So it's the complete antithesis of modern IPA. Whereas, you know, if it's an American one, basically you want to grab hold of a can as it comes off the canning line and drink it straight away before it goes bad. You know, it's like, has to be fresh, fresh, fresh. And completely the opposite in the old days. Not to say either's bad, but the past is obviously much better. And so these are some analyses of Bass, which are, well, no, not just Bass. So the bottom two, they're Scottish breweries. But you can see generally really high percent of attenuation. I mean, some of it really, really high.
And really, really low pH.
Yeah. So you can see there's obviously some acidity in these beers, which is again isn't something you normally associate with IPA. Not modern IPA anyway. Or at least not one that's gone right. Yeah, Scottish.
But the low pH was like due to lactobacteria or?
No, Brettanomyces, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well.
So it was acetic acid or?
No. It's a
Probably
different.
mixture, no?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably more lactic acid, but it's hard to say. I mean, there was probably a whole load of things in there.
Yeah, I think that if you go for the really spontaneous Brettanomyces thing, which they did, I think they never pitched it. You always have, it's a kind of mixed culture fermentation,
Yeah.
so this is why the
You
pH
end up with the whole
is much
spectrum
higher
of
as if
organic
you just
acid.
pitch let's say a clean Brettanomyces plus any ice strain, so yeah.
Yeah, Scottish IPA. Scotland isn't normally associated with IPA. It was actually one of the places where they brewed a lot, partly because Scottish brewers are very geared up to export. I mean, if you look at the percentage of beer, the exported beer that came from Scotland, right, you have to remember that Scotland's always been about 10% of the population of the UK. And the amount of beer exported from Scotland was percentage of beer exported from Britain was between 25 and 50% from Scotland. So it was one of the really big exporters of beer. And because IPA was a very popular beer in some markets, Scots brewers produced quite a lot of it. And it starts out being very much like the stuff they brewed in Burton and then sort of changes and becomes its own thing. And then you end up with the stuff sold actually in Scotland as being, probably not what people would normally consider as an IPA nowadays, because it wasn't that heavily hopped and not that strong. So you can see here that there was a really big drop in the hopping rate. I mean, pounds per quarter, I'm sure that means a lot to all of you. Pounds, that's like 450 grams, and a quarter, that's a wonderful British measurement. I'm not sure what it's a quarter of, but basically it's a volume measurement. So it's a way of measuring the quantity of malt. It's about, 336 pounds, so it's about 150 kilos, approximately. Anyway, and then Scottish Pale Ale sort of goes weird and starts getting really weak and not very heavily hopped and really diverges from the stuff brewed in England. Though the stuff that they were exporting was more like the classical India Pale Ale. And this is good, 90 shillings. So that's what the money used to be when I was a kid, shillings. So that's the way of saying 90 shillings and 0 pence. Which, again, I'm sure is completely... and what the Scottish had a tendency of doing is that they would call their beers by the wholesale price per hogshead, which is 250 litres, in case you've forgotten. And recently was used totally randomly, just as not anything, but if you go back to the 19th century, it did relate to the price of the beer. And so basically, the more shillings, the stronger the beer. Aggressive, loads of American hop types of IPA. And it's what people actually associate with IPA nowadays. I don't think that's a bad thing. And one of the things I've learned, the more I've looked into beer history, is no beer is ever static, and no beer style is ever static. And what you see is that things like porter, when you have the original porter that was brewed in London, it gets exported, and then people try and imitate it, and it becomes its own thing in all the places that it was exported to, because of local conditions like taxation, ingredients available, all sorts of things. And it's basically like the way living things evolve. You take an animal and put it in a different environment, and it will adapt and change and become something different. And that's exactly what happens with beer styles. And so it's interesting to see the way IPA has sort of changed and keeps changing. That you have the original UK version, Americans start brewing it and then start to interpret it in their own way, and then it moves to other countries and then they start interpreting it in their own way. I think it's a really good thing. It's what makes beer interesting. It's not the same everywhere it's brewed. Every country has its own interpretation of each style. And I think we should applaud that rather than, say, oh no, we should leave it the same. And people try and go back and say, oh, this isn't the same beer as it, this isn't the same as the original thing, or it's changed, or whatever. That's what's always happened. British beer has changed hugely over 200 years. And to try and deny that is just being stupid. But that's been done, I think.